So Werner, welcome.
Hello.
Thank you for taking the time out to come and talk to me. So I think, as we already mentioned, you have that great podcast you did with Sean and Corey, I think they were called, weren't they? So we're not going to go too much into depth about your full story, but if you could just give us a little brief introduction about, where you grew up and how you ended up in India.
Okay. I was born in Switzerland in a little village, some 20 kilometers from Zurich. Growing up there, always wondering what this is all about and not really finding much sense in my life. For some time getting very Christian, but then doubting also a lot of what they said. And then I came across yoga when I was 14 years old. And they gave me a very good direction from the beginning, as they quoted all the time Ramana Maharshi, Sri Ramakrishna. And from then on I just grabbed whatever I could to find, to read, and more the decision was there to come to India. Then for a few years I attended Swami Chinmayananda's Gita lectures in Zurich. He came every year, and then I ended up in his school, in his ashram in Bombay, thinking that I'm going to stay there for 3 years, but then somehow after some time, although no critic about that ashram, but I understood it's not so much my thing. Books, more grammar rules, and started to look around and came to know about a very unknown young mystic in Kerala, went to see, and she totally overwhelmed me. I went back to Bombay, but I couldn't get her out of my head, and then I went down to Kerala to that young mystic in a fisher village who became later famous as Madame Ritanandamai.
Or Amma.
Amma.
Some people call her the hugging saint, don't they?
Ammachi, the hugging saint. Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. I think one of the things that intrigued me as well, I listened to the podcast again yesterday, and you mentioned that before you'd met Amma, you'd met people like Krishnamurti and Sri Nisargadatta, and particularly Sri Nisargadatta, a very enlightened Advaita saint, but you didn't seem to feel any sort of draw towards him, and yet instead there was this unknown mystic in Kerala. What do you think happened? What was going on there, do you think?
He was also on his way out, and I felt very inspired by him. Even after that, when I was with Amma for 4 years, I kept on getting inspiration, reading in the first book that came out, I Am That. But especially the last time I saw him, he was already leaving, and he made clear he's not the one. And he even told me, don't come back, and tell also all the other people in Chinmaya mission not to come here. He just wanted to be there for the remaining time for his people. And it was clear I had to go to Kerala. That was destiny that I couldn't avoid to finally end up there.
If Nisargadatta had given you the option, would you have gone and stayed with him?
These are hypothetical questions you cannot really say. If you ask me like this and he would have told me, yes, come and stay with me, I think I would have done so, but he basically didn't let anybody stay with him for a long time. They would stay in the neighborhood, come to his satsangs. After sometimes he would tell them, go away, it's enough, go. So he didn't have that setup that somebody really stays with him. It was clear. He did something. He was a very inspiring force in my life, but it was also clear that somehow he pushed me on. And then when I came to Amma, I was so totally overwhelmed. She was that young mystic. There were just a handful of people there. She did 3 times in the week, in the night, ceremonies. No. She did ceremonies that the villagers would come, but otherwise she was not known. And there was that obvious intensity, and she was half of the time she was somewhere in her states. And when I went there for 4 days, then I went to North Kerala, attending a 10 days yajna of Swami Chinmayananda. But after those 4 days, when I walked out there, I was like high, like on a trip. What I had experienced there was so totally out of this world. Anything that I ever have experienced before, it was so totally out of that. It's like some mystic stories of the Greek and the gods coming down to earth, or like Krishna and the gopis. It completely to the bottom of my being, it touched me. Then I went back, stayed another few days, and went back to Bombay, but then she was so totally present. It was clear, in spite of having the possibility to soon go to the Himalayas in a new ashram of the Chinmaya mission, it was clear I have to go. Then I talked to Swami Chinmayananda about it, and he said, hey, go down to Kerala.
Did he? Yeah, he approved, did he?
Yes.
Mm. So you went there, you met her, got overwhelmed, had this 10 days with just incredible stuff going on, went back to Mumbai, and that was it.
Yes.
It was kind of deal done.
Deal done. Right.
Well, what do you think it was? Because I know, listening to other interviews, you said, you'd heard of her, and there was this sort of, I must go meet her, and then you said you met her and just fell at her feet, and it's like you knew something was there. What do you think was happening?
It was, in a way, it felt like a deep down recognition of what or who I have been looking for. It was coming to something so totally familiar. On top of that, like you asked me whether I would have gone to Nisargadatta, yes, he was in his way overwhelming. But then on top of that, there was something so totally familiar there. That
with Amma?
With Amma, yeah. When I came to Amma, which just touched me so much that even after that, when I went away again, all I could think of is returning there, and that's what I did.
Familiar the person, or familiar the...
I cannot really say what exactly. It's like, that's what you have been looking for all the time. The whole flavor of it was so totally reverberating. I was like vibrating along with it so naturally. It's like somebody who comes home to the close one, to the family. I mean, with her, with the other people, then it was the same story like everywhere. There feels that mutual respect and that affection, but still I didn't feel especially familiar with all the others, but just what Amma was representing, that was just overwhelming. After that, we did forge a very strong bond amongst each other. That's natural in such an intensity in a little group. And like in families, you have nice times and you fight with each other.
There was a bit of tension, isn't there?
Yes.
But partly what you're reminding me of, I've spoken to people who in Tibetan Buddhism who've met a master, they've met lots of teachers, and then they meet a master and they just go, I know you.
Mm-hmm.
And the master will say, yes, I know you. And their theory is, yes, we've worked together in past lives. Did you feel any of that sort of thing, or is that something different?
I didn't really wonder about those things. No. I'm not so much into the whole thing of reincarnation and the past lives and so, but basically just what that being was manifesting appealed so totally that I felt, yes, it's so familiar.
That energy coming
yes,
off, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll get that.
And also the way she behaved was so refreshing. After that it became more strict and traditional, but there she was that young, crazy mystic. She didn't behave as you would expect a guru to behave, but we were making jokes, we were eating together. She was then lying down, putting her head on the lap of one, her legs on the lap of another, and we were laughing a lot, and it was like totally relaxed situation, but at the same time an intensity there, and she was also, any moment she could also come and be very, very strict and strong and scold. But still, the whole thing was so unique, I felt. And at that time, I fitted totally into it.
And she just welcomed you in and said, yeah, you arrived, you're at the right place.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, amazing. And then you describe starting there. Because she's very much about bhakti and karma yoga, and you had this Advaita Vedanta, and she kind of, from what you said, she just went, yeah, you do that, that's absolutely fine. What was your practice? What were you doing that?
I did basically self-inquiry.
Okay.
Or not so much the question, using the question to be here, and then more like Nisargadatta describes in that I am that, just stay as good as I could with that sense I am. Then the mind would go out and you come back, and the mind would go out and you come back. At the same time, I did a little yoga every day, some breathing exercises, and she did give me a mantra. And then I asked her, should I do now mantra meditation, mainly mantra meditation? And she said, no. You continue your meditation, you continue your self-inquiry. If you are tired in between, repeat a bit the mantra. And that's what it felt also like that struggling, I am. Then in between, just repeat a bit the mantra, felt like relaxation, and a very good, helpful relaxation. So I was never a great mantra meditator, and also she was doing bhajans every night, but from the beginning she said rather, you sit. She let me come when I want to come, but basically the indication was always sit as much as you can. You want to sit, you can sit, so sit. That's what I did as good as I could.
Well, why do you think she was so encouraging about something that wasn't really her path or practice?
There was, at that time was not a particular teaching there, and everyone that was there, she was leading in their very specific way. And you cannot say there was one particular practice there. Also, that whole seva thing was not yet there. We were just a little group, and she basically encouraged everybody to practice whatever they are doing. The local boys, they were doing more like a meditation on a form. Meditation on a form, because that was convenient for them. That they had the form, looking at the form, then imagining the form and in that way connecting with that divine presence. Whereas for me it was that self-inquiry, self-attention, which was natural with the support of some yoga, with the support of the devotion. I couldn't get around devotion being with Amma, just the relationship with her. So it was also built up on that relationship, but the practice in itself was rather Advaitic. And she encouraged me, go on, that is your way. If I started to come more on the devotional side, she rather said, hey, this is your way. This went on for some 8 years like this, that there was in the middle the jnana, at the side was yoga, and then devotion.
What's the jnana is the self-inquiry practice.
Right. Jnana is the self-inquiry. The traditional jnana approach is maybe more, I am that, like I am Brahman or Soham, Hamsa, Tattvamasi. But part of the jnana, and as I have been inspired by Ramana Maharshi and by Nisargadatta, was more just, who am I? Hey, who am I? Not even giving an explanation what that is. Not trying to find an answer, but trying to find the direct experience of that. And then, after 8 years like this, it was a shift happened that the yogic aspect became more important than before. And this started to take a central place, still with the jnana attitude, but focusing more on energy than only consciousness. And mainly through the means of being aware of the breath. I did then all kinds of breathing exercises, developed spontaneously my own version of breathing exercises, but through the breath that you become aware of the subtle energy of the prana, and the prana leads you exactly to the same thing as the consciousness. Here, of course, in that jnana place, everybody talks about consciousness only. But then pure consciousness, even pure consciousness, is already an expression of what you are. It's not exactly what you are, but that's the subtlest we can possibly conceive of, pure consciousness. But it's not only consciousness, it's also energy and it's also love. It has these three aspects, and you can focus more on one or the other, and if you really sincerely go deeper, the other two will automatically join in.
So if you go for the energy, the consciousness and the love will appear. If you go for the love, whichever one you go for, these three will arise.
Right. Like, if somebody goes on the jnana path and studies books, and it becomes very knowledgeable, and does the jnana meditation, but if the heart is not opening, if the energy is not balancing out, that jnana remains very superficial. May talk for hours about jnana, but it doesn't go very deep. But the same thing is also, the yogi may do all kinds of exercises, physical and mental exercises and breathing exercises, and become very aware of the energy, but if somehow that peace doesn't come, that consciousness is not coming, if the heart is not opening, even if he develops some kind of powers, that experience remains very superficial. And so it's with the devotee who prays to God, and in the beginning it may be very emotional, but if that sense of peace and being aware of the divine presence, of that divine consciousness is not developing, then that devotion remains very superficial. But you can pick out one and go very sincere of that on that approach, and the others will simply join in automatically. Or you can do a combined practice from the beginning, according to how it's most natural. And for me it was for a long time mainly jnana. Devotion was there naturally. I didn't practice much about that, it simply was there. And there was yoga, and then it shifted a bit, that the yogic aspect became more important. Not that I did a lot of yoga exercises, but simply that I focused more on energy than simply on consciousness. Combining the two, but and that has remained, and actually that has become the most natural thing for me.
Can you say a bit more about energy? When you say you were focusing on energy, could you describe that a bit?
Through the breath, becoming aware more on the subtle energy that is behind it. That everything in manifestation is vibrating and build up on that energy. And so the breath is also a manifestation of that vital force, of the prana, of the Shakti. But then when you become more subtly aware of the energy, you become aware that every thought, every emotion, everything is built up on that energy. And every thought that you are thinking leaves an energetic echo in your system and radiates. Every emotion that you are experiencing, and especially if you are holding on to and building up, it has a strong energetic reaction in the body and it's radiating. So nothing in manifestation happens without the prana being involved. And you can focus on that, or you can focus on the aspect of consciousness, but it brings you to that same base of pure energy, pure consciousness, pure love. That's as far as we can go. That's as far as we can make an attempt, an effort to come to something. It's not an effort to reach something far away, but an effort to come back to what should be natural, but we have learned to be unnatural, and so we have to make an effort to learn again to be in the natural space of pure consciousness, pure love, pure energy. And what is right behind that. But there is absolutely nothing to say about that. So then you ask me about the energy practice, then everything becomes a bit energy practice. Even interacting with people or doing anything, there is always that awareness how it's a play of energy. And being with people, talking with people, that there is, okay, there are the words, there are the concepts, but there is continuously an energetic exchange happening.
And you were picking up on that and working with that?
Yes, that's then what I started to do when previously I kept people away, and then I stopped doing that. And now when I'm with people, that's a lot of what is happening. That automatically there is that circle of energy, and I may pick out and remove certain things that are disturbing, and rather give back something harmonious.
You pick out things that are disturbing and...
Right.
Can you say a bit more about that? How does that give something back? As in,
there's not really much to say about it. It's something that first was happening in myself, that the old stuff that came up, I learned to deal with it energetically. And instead of analyzing and in that way getting rid of it, then let things come up, feel energetically what is happening in this psychophysical manifestation, and learn to relax and let go and learn to transform it in the body, instead of holding on to and suppressing it again in the subconscious. And then the same thing that I did with myself start to happen more and more naturally, automatically when I communicate with people. It's not that I'm sitting there and think I should take things and I should this and that. It's something that's just started to happen, and I'm supporting it. I'm opening up to that it can happen, and then it goes on automatically.
When you said you were working with the breath, you said after you started to develop your own breath techniques, were you working with pranayama, controlled breath, or was it just observation of the natural breath?
Actually, at that time, I did a lot of controlled breath, right? That came easy, came natural. So I let it develop. Amma was, at that time I was sitting in my cave, and Amma would sometimes come. I tell I'm doing like this, I like that, and she said, yes, go ahead.
I'm just trying to get a picture of what you do. So when you say you were doing quite a lot of pranayama, I suppose I tend to think of it, you have a yoga class, you do a certain amount of pranayama and that's it for the day. Would you be doing in and out of pranayama as an ongoing practice, or just something at the start?
Yes, for quite a while I did, basically the whole time. Right. Not a violent pranayama, but then in between do some more formal pranayama exercises, but then keeping up that gentle controlled breathing basically the whole time long.
Can you say what it was, the gentle controlled pranayama?
I don't want to go too much into details about
Not
it.
a problem.
Yeah.
That's okay. So initially you were doing the Advaita I am that, because I think from what I remember, you stayed quite briefly with Amma, and then you went over to Tiru, didn't you?
Yes, well, it wasn't so quick, but after some time, because I had the desire to be a bit in a more quiet place, then when I started to really try to meditate. And in her place it was not so easy. We didn't have a place to hide. I was sitting on the palm tree and moving along with the shade, or sitting in a little hut of leaves, and people would come in and out and talk in loud voices as if I wasn't sitting there. So I wasn't ready to just screen that out also. I asked her and she said, wait. Eventually she said, okay, can go to Tiruvannamalai if you like. And then for the next 4 years, whenever she let me go, I would come here. There was a house here from a devotee who was with her, who had been here before, that I could use. And whenever she called me back, I used to go back. But for the next 4 years, I spent quite some time here. And then, by that time, they had constructed these little underground cells. And then 85, when I went back for a visit, I thought just for a short time, because an old French woman wanted to see Amma, and so I accompanied her to go to Kerala. But then somehow she caught me and made me stay there for 5 years at the row.
Why would she call you back from Tiru?
Sometimes she felt it's better that I'm in her physical presence. Although this is a super place also, and I felt very connected with her also when I was here. But still, if you have the opportunity to be in the physical presence of such a being, there is something special about it. And sometimes when she felt it would be good to have more of that, she would call me back.
When you were practicing on your own, what would be your schedule? How did your day look like roughly?
Well, at that time I really was. The first time I came here, then in the morning I used to go up to Virupaksha cave and sit there for 6 hours at a row, and then come back and then cook something and eat something, and then sit again, either in the house or sometimes go to the ashram, or then for sometimes in a nearby house. They had a little Dakshinamurti temple, and the owner said when he went away, could you go in the evening, put some flowers, and then I used to go and sit there. So my practice was mainly sitting. I did spend some time doing yoga exercises, but otherwise reading very little, having very little external contact. I didn't kick people out, but I didn't encourage contact, and so somehow I spent most of the time in that house. Then I went back to Kerala, and when I came again, I didn't go up to Virupaksha again, but stayed in that house. It was a very nice compound. Now it's noisier there, but at that time it was relatively silent, and they had made Nilu, who has been constructing that with his teacher. They made a beautiful compound with beautiful trees, so it was very nice to just be there and sit there, go out for shopping, and sometimes in the evening I used to go to the ashram. I used to like to go on the Friday nights to the Sri Chakra Puja in the Mother's Temple in the ashram, but otherwise I was just spending my whole time in that house.
Wow. Well, what sort of time would you start at in the morning?
First, I was rather later getting up, like I mean later for what came after that, like 6 o'clock in the morning. I wouldn't sleep much, on purpose reduce the sleep slowly. At the end I would sleep just 4 hours like that, and then most of the time sit, and when I was too tired, read a bit or do some exercises. And then later I get up earlier and earlier, because I start to appreciate very much that silent period early in the morning, when everything is very calm, nature is very calm. But yeah, not much to tell about what I did, except that I sat there.
I think because these days if you go off on a retreat, you're very much in an enclosed space, and there's a lot of hours of practice. And
yeah.
For most of us, certainly when I do it, it's like, it's great, it's a discipline, but there's a part of you that's restless and just wants to get up and walk away and move on. But you seem to have had this natural inclination. You just stayed put. You didn't get up and walk away. You were happy to put in the hours.
Right. In the beginning it was less, but then as the time passed it became easier and easier. Of course the impulse would come, and then I would check, no, I don't need to get up, and then just keep sitting. But then when I felt like I would get up, walk a bit around in the garden and come back and sit again. And then, yes, I somehow arranged my day that in between I did a little like cleaning up in the house, and then I cooked, went shopping very little, so that I could arrange it that I was not just sitting in between doing a little bit something else, but mainly it became very natural and easy that mainly I was sitting. I guess I had that support from Mama in the beginning. She encouraged me to do so, and then I got also the empowerment to do so.
Had anybody, a teacher or Amma or anybody at any point suggested to you it's really good to put in the hours to do that, or was that just something that instinctively occurred to you?
Before I came to Amma?
No, whenever you started the more diligent practice.
Yeah, no, nobody had instructed me like this before. No, it was already there. That's also a reason why I was looking around in Chinmaya mission, but because I felt more like sitting and meditating than like studying scriptures. And then when I came to Amma, she was very much encouraging that. But I didn't have other teachers before telling me, you should sit more. That emerged by itself, and then Amma so much confirmed it. Even now, then after that, the ashram kept on developing very differently. Then she was very much supporting that I continue that, and that's really what I felt to do. It's not that I imposed something very foreign or strange to myself, it came naturally. I'm not saying that's how you have to do it, but it's a way to go about it, and that was, for me, it was nice, it was natural.
So it's a very instinctive thing. Partly why I'm asking, a lot of people do say, how much meditation should I do? Is 10 minutes enough? Is it 10 hours? Is it? And it's always a question you hear. Yeah. So it's interesting, you were doing this back in the day before there was the internet and lots of these retreat centres around.
Yeah.
But you somehow just instinctively went, yeah, this is the way forward. This feels right.
Right. I mean, I was also mad. I had that idea, I want something. I don't know exactly what I want, but I want something. I want enlightenment, I want this. And when I came to Amma, then I also was after her. Hey, please give me something. And she very skillful really was dangling that carrot in front of my nose and giving me the feeling, just work a little more. Just it's just there. And I mean, I'm telling people, relax. She didn't tell me relax. She still, that's how I'm functioning. I couldn't help it. I was a fighter. So I had to fight, and she said, yes, intensify, more. Increase your desire for realization. Did all kinds of crazy things because of that, but that's how I had to go about it. So it wasn't just a peaceful sitting, it was also, especially in the beginning, I was wanting something and getting very frustrated that apparently nothing happened. I was sitting and nothing happened. Getting very pissed about it.
I want your money back.
And always Amma, she encouraged me, just continue, it will be all right. But she would also add, but you must have patience, and that part I didn't want to hear. No, I don't want to.
Nobody wants to hear that bit.
Then I would have to learn patience the hard way by just accepting that, yes, go on and on, and apparently not much is happening. When I complained to Amma, nothing is happening, then she said, yeah, you may think so there in the middle. I see perfectly well that everything goes in the good direction.
She said this to you?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. You just continue. It will be all right.
With hindsight, can you see what was happening to you? The changes?
That without being quite aware, that, as I say now all the time to people, the essence of the practice, of the techniques that you are doing, it's not so important what you are doing. The essence is all the same, that somehow or other you bring the attention back and connect consciously with being. And even if it's the hard way and I want, then it's still, you connect with that. And the more you connect with that, the more all the different layers start to harmonize. Theoretically, you are that, and you could be aware of that and remain with that all the time. But then, as a manifestation, we have grown up a bit screwed up and estranged from being natural. And so there is a lot of disharmony in our manifestation, in the different layers of our manifestation. And if somebody would simply connect consciously, be aware of that essence, and stay with it, there would be so much more energy there that the body couldn't stand it. Somehow the body has also to get used to it and slowly become capable of standing stronger and stronger and higher energy. It's like the nervous system is like a electrical wiring, and if you could put too much current into it, it burns out. And somebody who gets too much may also really damage the nervous system. But the difference is, as it is organic, it learns, it adjusts. It's not just a given, but as you keep on practicing and intensifying your practice, also your system is getting prepared that there can be a shift into another perspective with more intensity and stay without the body reacting badly about it. So it was all preparing. Although in my conscious experience it felt like, oh, I'm trying, and I'm just going round and round.
Yeah, nothing's happening.
I mean, sometimes there was wonderful peace, but I felt, compared to all my input that I'm giving, to all what I'm investing in this business, I'm getting very little out of it.
Got shortchanged.
It was still that me doing something to get something. That business idea was still there, and what is happening is simply not a business. It's not that you have to do your work and then finally you get something in as a reward for it. But I couldn't help it. I'm trying to achieve something, and trying to reach a goal, until eventually the whole structure collapsed. And then became aware there is no goal to reach somewhere. It's already here. It's now. It has never been absent. What we are looking for is that which makes every experience possible. It's that which is first, and only after that all the experiences come. Only after that all the thoughts, all the emotions come. Only after that all the crazy me personalities story comes, where unfortunately we get very hooked into and attached to it, and then it's become so difficult to detach from it. But prior to that which makes the experience possible is never absent. It's always here, now. And that is what we are looking for. It's not a goal at the end of a long journey. It's not something that we have to achieve. It's simply that we have covered it up so much that some rubbing work is necessary to remove all that coverage, to become aware what already is there.
You mentioned a couple of times on that theme about staying with the sense of being, or staying with the sense of I am.
Yes.
And it's prior to the thought, so you talking about the space that opens up between thoughts and the physical sensations. What could you say a bit about the sense of being, or the sense of I am, what it is, what people are looking for to stay with?
Well, I wouldn't call it a space in between thoughts and the body sensations or anything, but it's when you say I without a thought, then immediately your attention is touching something so totally familiar. Then out of habit the tendency comes, then we adding all the descriptions. I am like this, I am like that, I am this person, I have this past, and the whole story is there covering up that which is prior to that. But if you just say I, there is something so totally alive and totally familiar, and yet we are overlooking that most of the time. We don't know that, like you know something, that you are the knower and there is something known, but you know that by being. And you cannot say you know it, but you cannot possibly say you don't know it, because you know it by being. Everybody has that sense of I, without starting to explain it, but there is something so absolutely, totally familiar prior to everything else, prior to any sensation, prior to any thought, prior to any experience, prior to the whole story, and all the ideas we then put on top of that about what we are and how we are, and all the stories that come along with it. There is something so totally familiar, and basically all the practices are cheered to bring the attention back to that. It's not that we have to learn a technique, then become an adept of the technique and become better and better. It may happen if you are practicing a certain technique that it's getting easier and easier, but the essence of it, that technique is a crutch, it's a help to make it easier to connect consciously with that.
During those years when you were kind of frustrated with it, not getting it, were you able to access the sense of being, the sense of I am? Were you able to go there regularly?
Yes, I used to have at least little breaks where it stopped, and it was just very quiet. That kept me going. Just if it was just restlessness and fighting with the mind all the time, I think I couldn't have stood it then. But it was a lot of that, a lot of me, my mind fighting, trying to control, trying not to think, trying to push it away, trying this, trying that. Instead of relaxing and simply redirect the attention, I had to struggle. I had to go about it like this. But then in between there would be silence, and that kept me going. That kept me inspired enough that even when I kept on complaining a lot to Amma, I felt, yes, it's worth the trouble. There is another possibility of existing.
What happened, do you think, that brought you around to this idea that this struggle, this transactional practice wasn't working, and that you needed to do something different and relax into it?
Actually, it was a whole dramatic, bigger than life story. That I was still there in Amma's ashram, in the cave, and although basically my attitude, my convictions very Advaitic, I wasn't quite aware how much I have based everything on the fact that Amma is there. Amma is, I'm safe. Amma is looking, nothing can go wrong. And there, when I was the first time in the cave without coming out, she used to come like once in a month to visit and encourage. And actually she was rather exaggerating, praising me and telling me great things, and exaggerated. And I know that she was telling things like this also outside and making everybody else jealous. So I had all these feelings coming back to me. And I was, on one hand I was afraid, because if a guru is doing that, it's dangerous. If you get so much out of proportion praises, then it's like your ego is being blown up simply after that to be cut down. But of course, couldn't help it. I liked it also, felt good about it. But then suddenly, when she came, she gave me the feeling that there is something totally not okay, without giving an explanation, but something is totally not good. And when she left, I was left in a state of confusion and thinking, my God. There I started to become aware how much I have build up my confidence that I know Amma is there, she's looking, nothing can go wrong, and then, Amma is not happy, something may go wrong. And getting restless about it, and then the mind started to spin, and the more the mind started to spin, the more all the energies that have been built up over the years of, this was 9 years after intense practice, they started to go completely crazy in my body, going up and down, and I had been a total brahmachari, celibate, not doing anything to myself also, and it was clear for my story, in my path, this is essential, and suddenly it came overwhelming. This sexual stuff would just shake on my body. I was sitting there in my little cave, and it would come, I would jump up and go like a tiger in the cave to and fro, and trying to somehow get a hold on that, and slowly getting control, slowly calming down. Took 3 weeks until Amma came again, and then I thought, now we can balancing out, everything is fine. When she left, it was worse than before. So before she was lifting me up and praising, and then suddenly she was pulling the rag under my feet, and when she came appearing to be totally unapproachable and giving me even the feeling that she has lost control and it's going out of her control, and so I was getting worse and worse and worse, and getting more and more restless, crazier and crazier. When I sat there in that cave, it was in the midst of the ashram, so I could hear what was going on around. I could also hear people talking in front of the cave, and they were talking about my stories. But then it became so obsessive that I started to hear things even when people were not talking, like they were talking about me, and so really starting to lose it. And I thought, my God, that the end of my spiritual career is that I'm just ending up in a loony bin. I already had this kind of imaginations. They will pack me in a plane and send me to Switzerland, and there my father will be standing there. I told you all the time, I told you so, I told you all the time, because he did tell me that I'm going to get crazy. At the end, I came out of the cave completely not knowing what's going on. My reality, previous from the Advaitic standpoint, I would say it's not real, it's a dream. But then when the experienced reality start to crumble, then I, instead of relaxing and welcoming it, I was totally trying to hold on to something real, and everything felt like it goes through my fingers. I didn't know what is real, what is not real, and instead of accepting it and then just relaxing and wait and see what happens, struggling against it, and getting, because of that, more and more crazy. And then I came out and started to work like everybody. By that time it had become a very active ashram, doing seva, thinking I have to be a good boy. I've been only been doing my own thing. I have to do also something. And then gradually I became aware, hey, it's just a big game. I don't know what's going on, but it's nothing is lost. It's just something I have to go through. And in a way, for the first time in my life, I was ready to accept I have no clue. Previous, I had always the feeling I know everything. I had studied, I have learned, I know the jnana, I know this, I know I'm on top of the situation. And there, for the first time, I totally had to recognize I have no clue what's going on. So let it just go on. And when that resistance went away, then the mind also calmed down. And then soon I went back to my cave and started to sit there again. And then it was not that the old reality reformed, reconstructed itself. It was more out of the rubble of that a new way of experiencing emerged, experiencing myself, experiencing this whole world, experience what is. And there, all my old convictions didn't make sense anymore. I could see that they had made sense in my story to drive me on, that all my spiritual convictions, my spiritual beliefs, they were good to give a good direction. All my convictions about what I have to do, that was needed for that particular character to just go on and on and on, but it simply didn't make sense anymore. Everything had become the play of that same divinity. And instead of struggling to get somewhere, just be with that and relax in that. One of the convictions I had that had also completely disappeared is that I have to struggle, eventually it makes boom, and that's enlightenment, and that's the end of the story. Finished. But more, okay, the stories can happen very differently from one to another, but it's possible that at a certain time you rotate into a new perspective, but that simply means one chapter is gone, a new chapter starts, and from there it continues. But the painful struggling part, that can finish. The suffering part we can lay back, let it be in the past, and not more create that suffering anymore. But from then on, it became clear that the experience, essentially it remains the same, the experience of that, the experience is simply unfolding, and there is no limit to that, there is no end to that. And then it became natural, instead of struggling, to just be and relax, intensify that experience by simply relaxing in that being, instead of struggling to get somewhere, instead of struggling to control. Can do that playfully, but not as a compulsion, not as an obsession. And I see for most of the people it's much more beneficial to be more relaxed in the beginning, to somehow make efforts but learn also to relax instead of just struggling. If you have to do so, then do so. If you somehow have the necessary willpower to pull it through, and if maybe you have the necessary support to pull it through, eventually the whole structure will come down crushing. But it's not a general approach recommended, because it's a painful business, and it need not be like this. Even if you go about it more relaxed, there's already enough trouble dealing with all that crap that comes out of the subconscious. We don't have to make it more painful.
True, yeah.
So most of the time I'm telling to people, just yes, make your efforts, but what comes natural to you, but learn to relax. Make your efforts with the awareness not to achieve something out there, but to make the effort to make it easier as a help to become self-aware here now, and relax in that. And the more you relax in that, the deeper you go, the more intensity is there. It's not the more cramped we are, the more intensity is there, but if we really connect and relax, that it becomes more intense and expansive, that experience.
So at some point you said you just stopped suffering.
Right. For some time it was still, it was not one single point. Then after I said, when I stopped resisting the fact that I don't know anything, then I went back to the cave, and then there was a period of shifting of learning. There were 3 points, and each time after that point it could not be the same as before. But basically it was more a whole period where there was quite a shifting, and then still after that I was aware it keeps on unfolding. It doesn't stop there now. It's not that I have to put a label on this now and stop there, but yes, it's from now on it goes playfully, joyfully. But for some time it was a bit going to and fro, and the old habits came up, and the old frustrations came up, and also anger came up, because during the time when I was really in pain and getting crazier and crazier, there I built up a lot of anger also. Sometimes I was swinging from one side to another towards Amma. Then on one hand I thought, oh, Amma had so much hope in me. Amma had so much hope in me, and I have disappointed her. I failed, and feeling very miserable about it. On the other hand, I felt, oh my God, I had so much faith in you that nothing can go wrong, and you, it's your fault. Later I understood she just played her game with me, so what I needed, and she pushed and knew how far she can push, that I'm not going irreparably over the edge. But the worse it is, the more difficult it was, the story, the more I was forced to dive in my own resources that simply opened up and were there after that. But for some time the emotions came back a bit to and fro, but that calmed down very quickly from the new perspective. It was easy to see that and then let that go. And then basically, yes, I can say I said goodbye to suffering for good. I mean, as long as you are embodied, sometimes the body hurts. But that's not what I'm calling suffering. And as long as you're living in this world, sometimes you're facing pleasant circumstances, and sometimes you are facing unpleasant circumstances. But what I call suffering is that mental resistance that we are building up to the fact of what we are experiencing. Then people spend their life, their time so much thinking, it should be different, it should not be like this, something should be different. Nothing wrong having ideas how it could develop, in what direction to develop, but accepting the fact of the present experience is liberating us from suffering. Then we are not always in that resistance and why, and in self-pity, why me, poor little me, it's happening to me again. But okay, this is the situation, I take it, I deal with it, I let it go.
Is there's all sorts of ideas about when you've realised the self, there's no anger and almost no emotions. What's your take on things like anger and?
As long as you are appearing in this world in a human form, the whole range of emotions is there. But the emotions are being seen for what they are. They are just little ripples. They're making the human experience more juicy. Definitely. But the reaction can be there. There can be an aggressive situation. There can be the reaction of anger. But if you are not attached to that anger, then you have the freedom. Whether you just let it pass like a puff of air, not leaving a trace, or whether you are picking it up and for some time feel that anger, let it circulate in the system, enjoy the anger, but not expressing it, or whether you feel, this situation is justified that I do express anger. It makes sense. And then you can also express anger. But you are not more a victim of emotions, because the emotions is just an aspect of the experience. And it's our little ripples, why they become so devastating, that there is that people hook into them and make them getting attached and feeding their life force into them and make them bigger and bigger and bigger, and then they become overwhelming and often destructive, devastating. If we don't do that, then there is nothing wrong with any of the emotions. We don't have to screen out the holy emotions and the unholy emotions and somehow squash them.
I like that, the holy emotions and the unholy emotions. Great. Was there so you said you had this thing where Amma built you up and then knocked you down, and it drove you pretty crazy, and then you said you relaxed into it and things started to change. Was there a point, where you could say, I'd realised the self, or something changed permanently, or what happened to get to that?
I'm never saying that I have realized the self. The self is real, that essence is real, and I became aware it has been there all the time, and I at a certain time didn't lose that conscious touch anymore. My attention may be absorbed in what I'm busy with, in what I'm doing, in the external circumstances, but deep down there is that awareness. There is always that silent pool that is absolutely not affected by that. But the discovery continues, the experience of that keeps on intensifying, expanding, whatever you want to call it, and there's no limit to that. So the very expression of now you have realized the self is also something that doesn't make sense to me anymore, because the self is real for everybody, and that you are alive, that you are conscious is already a realization of that, an awareness of that. It may be quite screwed up, but it's it's still that. And then the more you let that go, then the purer you can just be. And then when I often simply felt immersed in that, then I become aware there is so infinitely more to experience, infinitely more to experience, infinity beyond that. And I became also aware I had this kind of experiences my whole life long, since I was a little boy, that there were always those moments when it just became totally silent. And even when the thought was crawling through the consciousness, it felt, this feels somewhat interesting and pleasurable, and the whole flavor of the experience used to change at times, even when I was a little boy, and it came back throughout my life. But then after that I became aware, it's basically that experience I used to have already as a youngster. But I felt it was no big deal, nothing special about it. I guess everybody has this kind of experiences, because it feels so normal, so natural.
This still empty, still place, the peaceful place that you're saying about, that's not great words, but you know what I mean. When you
come from the Buddhist side,
yeah,
so
know,
it's shunyata, it's empty.
Forget about that. But was it something you went, oh, it's that, it's been there all along, or was it something new that you were accessing, or?
It's more the first, something that has been there all along, but not quite aware. Like the attention is so disturbed that there is always like so many filters there that it feels so much smaller, so much more limited, so much more polluted with all the mental activities, with all the self-importance, me, with all the self-pity, with all the important stories in the world. Well, something so pristine, so beautiful has been there all the time, totally unblemished. There is not a stain on it, ever. But we're just overlooking it all the time. It's not that we have to create it. It's not that it's the product of our practice, the end of a long journey. It's here, it's now, it's never absent. Without that, absolutely nothing is there.
You always hear people make a comment that at some point the mind seems to go, or there's not much thinking, or some people talk about the mind destroyed, which sounds a bit extreme.
Yes.
What's your...
I think there is nothing to be destroyed, because there is no such a thing like a mind. We have that capacity in the human form, I'm sure also in other forms, but in the human form we have that capacity to form consciousness into reasonable thoughts. And this is beautiful. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. We don't have to destroy that. In that way, that inner beauty can express itself on this level. It's a tool. It's a tool to express yourself. And then when we use it as that tool, use it when it's appropriate and put it aside. When it's not appropriate, then this thinking is absolutely not a problem. Somehow what has gone wrong is that we give too much importance to that the whole world functions to that everybody is thinking all the time, and then it stops being a tool but becomes a helpless compulsion to just go on rumba, and then feels like I have a mind and I have to kill that mind. I have to... It's me and my mind. I felt very long. I fight with my mind. I and my mind at war with each other. But there is not such a thing like a mind. When we think, we call it a mind. It's built up on prana. And when we don't think, we don't talk about the mind. It's not then that the mind is there and we have to watch, and when it comes we have to give it a new bang somehow. There is no thing like a mind. It's just for convenience we talk about that's the mind. It's in the mind because we think like this. If the thoughts are in a certain way, we say, oh, it's just in the mind. And we keep our conscious experience reality alive by thinking about it all the time. If we stop doing that, it starts to crumble. It's because we have learned to experience in a certain way, then we think this is reality, this is how I experience it, and others also can experience it. So it must be real, it's reality, but it's just a habitual way how we are experiencing, and we keep that habitual way, that reality intact by thinking about it all the time. People, when they wake up, they start thinking, and then it thinks and thinks and thinks and thinks, and when they go to sleep, finally it stops. And the whole reality is being made solid by thinking about it all the time. And if we stop doing that, then you become aware this is not as real as it appears. It's a dream-like appearance. It's there as an experience, but it's not real. It's empty. But it's also full. It's full of that bubbling beauty, essence that the self can express itself, that the essence can express itself.
You said today, and I've heard you say it before, that the self with a capital S, that it's constantly evolving, and it's what do you mean by that? The experience of it, or whatever it is.
Yeah. I don't say that the essence is evolving. I'd say that the experience is evolving. So there is a being not separate from the whole rest of existence, a being that is all one, not apart from that all oneness, and yet has its own unique flavor. And that being's experience keeps on unfolding. So there is that. Here, people usually talk only about the ego, imagined personality, and the impersonal beingness. But there is also something more. There is that being. And there's nothing wrong with that. We don't have to get rid of that being. That being which is also even now not incarnated, which is timeless, spaceless, which is just projecting an aspect of itself into this matrix to gain experience. And then in the matrix there forms that personality and thinks I am separate. But actually the I am in the me personality is just a reflection of that I am in the being that is timeless, not incarnated, even now. And for that being there is no death, no birth, so there is no past lives, no future lives, no rebirth for that. They're simply projections at certain times in certain matrices, in this world, in other worlds, in any world. To gain experience, to unfold the inner experience of that one essence.
Could you give me an example of an unfolding? You said there's this constant unfolding. Is that possible?
It may mean that new experience, new fields of experience may emerge, but it may also simply mean that your experience from being here is just simply intensifying. That the joyousness of existence is simply intensifying. That you can sit very quietly, very peacefully, experience that intensity, that joyousness of existence in an intensity that previous in that same manifestation would have driven you into a frenzy ecstasy. Like Ramana has also indicated that there is something evolving. When he was an old man and they were sometimes wondering in the youth, he was sitting in samadhi, whether he has come down from the time state or now he's sitting there and talking to people. And he said, no, the state is the same. There he was sitting in samadhi, here is sitting talking. And after all, the jnani's power is continuously increasing, indicating that also for that being that has appeared as Ramana Maharshi, something keeps still unfolding. The self, Brahman, Shunyata, Purna, whatever you want to call, the impersonal beingness, that oneness, and in that oneness there is also the multiplicity. We have the tendency, when we hear that teaching of the oneness, now we understood, and this is the oneness, this is the truth, this is the highest. This is just a way of pointing at something that cannot be put in words. And this oneness includes also the multiplicity. In that oneness there are myriads and myriads of beings that are one with that oneness. They are not separate, and yet have their unique flavor in that oneness. And that being, the experience of that being keeps on unfolding, intensifying, becoming more powerful, more loving, more expansive, whatever you can imagine. So no point in describing what it means. It's just that the whole potential that is there keeps on unfolding and there's no limit to it. I don't see that ever there is a point then you could say, now, I've packed it, I've got it all. There's still infinity beyond it.
And I was interested, one of the things I heard you say is that even when you settled into this other way of being, you still carried on practicing quite intensively, but you said it was a very different way of practicing.
Right. Then I came here. I didn't know whether I ever returned to the ashram. That was 1990. 2.5 years here, doing again a lot of things which I strictly avoided before. Before everything was spiritual, unspiritual, pure, impure, right, wrong.
Holy, unholy.
Yeah, it was very clear and living strict by the spiritual, pure code. And then suddenly everything was just a play of that same essence, that same divinity. So did a lot of things which I strictly avoided before, and it was fine. It was still set, but not as strict, as intense as before. It was more a period of settling down, solidifying that new perspective, settling in that new energy level. Not so much in unfolding, but somehow centering it and stabilizing it. And then naturally, for me, it had become natural. I felt like intensifying that experience. And you can do that in different ways, but for me it felt naturally, so I'm going to sit more again. And then I wrote to Amma, I'm going to sit more again. Maybe I'm doing it here in Tiruvannamalai, maybe I'm going to the Himalayas, or if she's interested, I can also come back and do it there. And then she was interested. So I went back to my cave. For 3 months I used to come out, and then I felt, okay, now I'm sitting there again without coming out. Not like before, having a goal in mind and I have to achieve something, but simply it feels right. For the time being, to just stay in that space and do nothing else. And then quite some time passed until I came out again.
I think you said it was 7 years or something, wasn't
Yes,
it?
then 7 years passed until I came out again. But it was not that struggling part that was there before. But just, I did exercises, I did make efforts, but playfully, joyful, like somebody who is sitting in a office the whole day. They may do for recreation, like go jogging or go swimming, make efforts playfully, and then you can make efforts without struggling, but in a playful, joyous way, and it's not disturbing your inner peace. Like people here have the tendency to say, oh, don't make efforts, it's bringing you away from that. Effort is of the ego, it need not be. You can very well make efforts in a playful way to intensify, but mainly it was just being there in those, and spending 7 very peaceful and joyous years there.
I think you mentioned something there. There's a sort of a thing these days about you don't have to practice, you don't have to make effort. You did some very intensive practice, and that's quite a traditional way of doing it as well. Traditionally, as you say, people went to the Himalayas. Would you recommend it as somebody, if you met somebody like yourself back in the day of that age who wanted to do that kind of level of practice, that locking yourself away, and would you recommend it as a practice, as a path? As an approach?
It is an approach. I would recommend it very, very rarely. Yes. I would recommend to people, spend every day some time where you are not doing anything, where you are not busy, where you can step out of all that and just be in one way or another. And then how much is very different from one to another. For some people, very short meditations, and then it becomes already too much. and for others it's naturally to increase a bit. And if that tendency is there, I'm happily encouraging them to do so. But if I feel somebody is forcing, and if they keep on doing so, and at the end they may throw away everything frustrated, then I tell them, you rather calm down a bit. And everybody has to find then a bit a balanced program of being with people, doing things and doing the normal things, and withdraw and just put your undivided attention as good as you can, simply in being here. How you are doing it doesn't matter, whether you're using a technique, this technique, that technique, whether you are in a tradition or not in a tradition, but that you have every day some time where you direct your attention back to the source in one way or another. That I would recommend also to the most busy and active, naturally active person, at least a little bit. But then try to bring that attention as good as you can into your daily life, into your activities. To tell somebody to go and lock yourself away like this, if somebody really naturally feels like that, and that potential is there, yes, sure, it's an approach. But if one would force oneself against one's natural instincts, it would become destructive. You cannot force that about, and then it's helpful that if you force yourself too much, it can become destructive. And people who do that, either they just get so disgusted that they just turn totally away from it, or they drive themselves nuts.
So it was something you felt quite naturally an inclination to do, so it was a suitable approach.
And it was step by step getting intensified. Yes. When I locked myself away for the first time, I had already spent years doing nothing else but sitting on my bum the whole time.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
One more in this tradition, and all of these Eastern traditions, there's a strong emphasis on you have to have a guru. The guru can transmit stuff to you, show you the whatever it is they can show you. What's your take on the necessity for a guru?
If you really have that close relationship with a guru who is a guru, then that is a great help. No doubt about it. But it's not something that you can artificially create. The ultimate guru is your own self, is your own essence. And the external guru's job is to always point back to yourself and say, look, it's already there. It's not that I am having something that you are having, not what you are looking for in me is already there in you. That's the guru's job, with all their crazy games, that to point you finally back to your own resources. So I would recommend anybody to connect with that guru as good as they could, with that ultimate guru. And then let the external story develop itself. And if it's necessary that one comes into contact, into a real guru-shishya relationship, in the contact with a guru like this, it will happen. You can't avoid it. But if people are going out guru hunting and trying to find, they have the tendency then to go easily astray and running after anybody, because they want so desperately somebody to tell them what to do. Be yourself, connect with yourself strongly, hold on to that, and then somebody may come, a teacher, you may get inspiration, but it's not a guru-shishya relationship. You may get good pointers, and thank you very much, and you move on again. And if it needs to happen in your story, then the guru comes along, you somehow stumble on the Guru, and then it's clear. And then that is a great blessing, that is a great help, but it cannot be artificially produced. So we don't have to run around and hope of where can I find the Guru. Find that Guru in yourself, and then the external story, the inner Guru will provide what you need. And some people may never have that close Guru-Shishya relationship, but be in connection with a teacher, be in connection with more than one teacher, and get good hints, get good support, get good pointers. But if that sincerity is there, that sincerity will guide you. But if it's just many people doing that just as a new sport, a new pastime, running from one teacher to another, becoming very knowledgeable, can sit in the tea shop and fight with each other, who knows better.
You've seen that play out.
Yeah. Yes. And then like that, running from one teacher to another is often more confusing than helpful. So sometimes people ask me, should I go to somebody? And I tell them, you feel for yourself. You hear about somebody, if you feel a resonance, then go and see. And if you feel basically good, if you feel at ease, at peace basically, if it's not too many things that appall you, then at least for the time being, it's fine. You're in the right place. But learn to listen to yourself and not to what people tell you, because they always will come and tell you, oh, I've been there and there is so much power and I had so wonderful experiences. And if you feel it doesn't attract me, then listen to that and don't be afraid of missing something. We are not missing anything. Everything that we need is already here. It's already there. It need not be produced. We just have to find it. And even if other people are gushing away how wonderful it is and how deeply their meditation goes and how wonderful their experience, and you feel not to go there, then listen to that. Don't go running from one to another, but hold on to that ultimate Guru, and then on the way you may have teachers, and eventually you may also have that intense Guru-Shishya relationship. If it happens, it's a great blessing, but we can't produce it, so be open for it. But if you don't want it, then you don't have to, well, because some people tell me, frankly, I don't want to have a guru, tell me what to do. And then don't feel bad about it. You hold on to your ultimate guru, and then you will be guided. The external guru has the advantage that he can immediately again tell you, hey, come on. And we can by ourselves easily tell ourselves story and imagine things and go for a long time in a certain direction. If we would honestly listen deep down, we would feel we are going a bit off the track. But then, because mentally we are not prepared to listen to that, we may go a bit astray and have to experience the sweet and the bitter of it and come back again. And if you are with a guru, we can say, hey, come, here it's going along. Yeah. So you can get faster along, but then infinity is very patient.
Got plenty of time on its hands. Quick. Well, one thing I've mentioned the other day, I just wrote last question really. What you were doing, that you were with Amma, you were doing some very difficult stuff, and then there was particularly those bits when she was building you up and knocking you down. Were there points at which you went, forget this, I'm going to go to the beach or do something nice or go back home, or just break for the border with that frustration and not getting anywhere and those difficulties? What kept you hanging in there?
It has been something that has been driving me my whole life long. And when I was 14 and came along yoga, very quickly I decided I will go for that. Somebody is calling you. I really felt, oh yes, it pulls me in that direction. But then, I mean, I was a young lad, healthy lad, and then I went through a period of 6 years where I went a bit this side and then the other side. Sometimes I felt also then, I don't want to have anything to do with this world. I'm beyond that. But actually just suppressing all the desires, and then it would build up and then come out. And for some time I would make up for all the things that I didn't do before. And just go for it, and like a bit to and fro like this. And at the age of 20, 21, I felt this is stupid. I feel like I'm going to and fro. But I have to somehow integrate that more, and then learn to, okay, I'm let myself be in the world and fulfill desires, but I'm also at the same time don't give up practicing. Keep up that current every day, at least a little. When I have more time, more inspiration, I extend. When I have less time, less inspiration, less. But keep that up. And then develops a very different way of experiencing things. You are more attentive, you become more aware where your sense of fulfillment really comes from. And then when I finally left Switzerland with 25, then I felt now it's really time to go for that. And then when I came to Amma, I felt, yes, there is absolutely, there's no turning back. There is no either it's nice or then I go back and have a good life. I felt no, that was simply not an option anymore. And then when things crashed, and I felt I was afraid maybe I'm just going nuts, and God knows what. But I didn't feel I'm going back now to a so-called normal life and try to get happy there, because I know this is not going to be possible. I knew too much that there I'm not going to find that fulfillment, that peace that I'm looking for. So that was so clear, there was no more question about that. Then after that, I mean, I have been doing again a lot of things. People would say I have a bit turned away from the strict spiritual path. Then I left in the year 2000 Amma's ashram with my partner, with Sudha. And for many people this was very difficult to swallow, that the ascetic in the cave who really is doing the thing then comes out and goes off with a girlfriend. So for many people they think I'm already sort of fallen from the path. Maybe over the years as I continue they may revise their attitude, but in the beginning it was clear, the fallen yogi there.
Really,
Yeah. In my experience, there was absolutely nothing such. But it felt then right, okay, now it's time to be with a partner. And then, of course, she also goes through a difficult thing to get rid of that sticks onto. So I had a lot of time invested just to set up the stage that it's possible for her not to be so busy with practicing myself, but actually it was a good exercise for me to establish more practicing while being active, while doing things, while going around. And
for you to be practicing while active,
right. Before I have been practicing while being inactive, and so it was a good exercise to develop that more. The practicing while being active into with ordinary things. But turning away, that was not an option either. I can continue or I die. But just giving up and all right, I'll try to make a funny life as possible. Somehow, this was just not more there in my agenda, in my consciousness.
It's never on the cards.
It was before. Before I came to India for some time to and fro, maybe I still go rather for that than for this. But eventually it became clear. Now there is only one direction. If that there is either getting somewhere or dying on the way, but turning away from that was not an option.
Werner, anything you'd like to add? Anything you'd like to add?
I think we have covered quite something.
We've covered quite a bit of ground, haven't we?
Yes. Everybody, I wish them learn to be natural. And in order to become natural, we have to learn to be honest. It should be natural to be honest to oneself, but unfortunately, we have grown up in a society where we have learned to be dishonest, even with ourselves, to tell ourselves story. Deep down, everybody knows always where it's going along, where it's best. And so we have to learn something that should be natural. We have to learn as if it was something new by practicing it, by reminding ourselves to be honest. And if we are honest, then we become aware what is naturally on the program for us, in which direction it goes. And every story is unique and beautiful. We don't have to imitate anyone. We can draw inspiration from the sincerity, from the intensity of other lives, but never imitate it. Live your own beautiful, unique, natural life.
Brilliant. Thank you, Werner. Thank you so much for taking the time and being so open with your story. That's brilliant. I'll press.
You're welcome.